If you're thinking about getting a new keyboard and have narrowed it down to one of these four, how do you decide which one to get? That is a, well, it depends question. Would this be your first split keyboard with a thumb cluster? Are you combating RSI? Do you prefer convenience over customization? Do you have a neurological and or developmental disorder that's taken your free will hostage, and the only way to satiate this unexplainable obsession is by giving in to purchasing a fairly expensive keyboard that you don't even know if you'll like, but you know that your mind and body will not know true rest until you have one in your hands? Or do you just find these keyboards interesting? Well, in this video, I'll do my best to explain why you might want to pick one keyboard over another. For disclaimers, this video is not sponsored and I have no financial incentives to recommend or not recommend one of these keyboards. The thoughts and opinions in the video are my own, based on using each of these keyboards in my day-to-day work as a software engineer. Your time is important, so I'll be adding timestamps if you want to jump to a particular keyboard or just jump to the end and see the conclusion. With all that boilerplate out of the way, which keyboards specifically am I going to be taking a look at today? In no particular order, they are the Moonlander and the Voyager, both from ZSA or ZSA, depending on which side of the Atlantic you live on. Personally, it does sound better. I will give you Brits that. Well, there's a lot of things I could give you, but anyway, okay. So the Kinesis Advantage 360 Pro and the keyboard I just recently put out my first impressions video on, the Glove 80 from Moonlander. And I'm not saying these are the top keyboards on the market to pick from. These are just the four split mechanical keyboards with thumb clusters that I've personally used. The next most talked about keyboard that I see in the comments is probably the Digma Defy. If Digma Labs wants to send me one, I would be happy to take a look. My keyboard budget is a little spread thin right now. Anyway, moving on, I talk about each of these four keyboards in detail in my other videos, so I'll try to keep this one a little more high level. And also, I cannot emphasize enough that these are just my thoughts and my opinions based on my own experience using these keyboards. And it's gonna be a little different for everybody. I just happen to be a guy with a camera making videos and putting them on YouTube. So with that said, if there's anything you can add to the conversation, put them in the comment section below, because those additional insights can be critical to boosting my channel. To helping other viewers who will benefit from other perspectives. So if you're trying to decide which of these keyboards to get, then I think there's a couple questions that you have to ask yourself. And these questions could apply to any keyboard. It doesn't have to be one of these four. So I already kind of touched on these questions in the intro of this video, but they are questions like, is hand health a top priority? Do you care about deep customization, either customizing the keyboard itself or customizing the firmware? Will this be your first split mechanical keyboard with a thumb cluster, or have you already grown out a neck beard? Do you prefer customization or convenience? Does the technical aspect of keyboards interest you, or would you prefer things to just kind of work out of the box? Do you plan on moving between locations frequently, or frequently need to switch between different workstations? Or do you plan on keeping the keyboard mostly in the same location? All right, so let's talk about the Kinesis Advantage 360 Pro first. And a lot of what I have to say also applies to the Advantage 360 Non-Pro and the Advantage 2, although there are some differences. The main difference being the Advantage 2 and the Advantage 360 Non-Pro have the Smart Set programming key and also have a Smart Set app to go along with them, which is a GUI you can use to program the keyboard. As I sat down to plan out this video, I started to wonder if there was really a point of including the Kinesis Advantage 360 Pro, because I think in just about every case it gets beat out by another keyboard, mostly by the Glove 80. The Advantage 360 is still a very comfortable keyboard, and if you already own one, I wouldn't say like you should go out and get a Glove 80, but if you don't already have one and you're trying to decide between the Glove 80 and the Advantage 360 Pro, then I really see no reason why you wouldn't just get the Glove 80. I have nothing against Kinesis or the Kinesis Advantage 2 or 360 or 360 Pro. I just think the Glove 80 is better in just about every single way. And I'd really like to see Kinesis come out with some new innovations. Kinesis seems like a great company, and I hear their customer service is incredible, and they've done a lot of good in this world and made a really big impact in the ergonomic keyboard space. But I'd like to see some new innovations come from them. When it comes to the concave keywell, although yes, it is very comfortable, I still think the Glove 80 does it a little better. If you're worried about portability, this keyboard is the least portable. If you want the ability to mount this has no mounting options. If you want something that's a bit more user-friendly, do not get this keyboard. I think you'd be a lot better off getting the 360 Non-Pro or the Advantage 2, but the Advantage 360 Pro, I really don't think you should get this keyboard unless you already have some programming chops and are willing to be a little patient when it comes to configuring this keyboard. And when it comes to Bluetooth, once again, this keyboard has known problems, which I personally have experienced. Kinesis was founded in 1991 and released their first contoured keyboard in 1992. And since then, the overall design really has not changed that much. And we're talking 30 years. So that's, I don't know, that's really all I have to say about this keyboard. I cannot overstate how grateful I am that this keyboard even exists and has probably done a lot to inspire a lot of the ergonomic keyboards that we now enjoy, but it kind of feels like this thing is feeling a little dated, and as of today, there's too many compelling next-gen keyboards to pick from. Okay, so next, let's talk about the Moonlander. So the Moonlander was my introduction to split mechanical keyboards, and I loved this thing. This thing was great. The only reason I stopped using it was because my RSI started to get out of hand, and that's why I switched to the Kinesis Advantage 360 Pro, but I still think this is an excellent keyboard. And one might ask, well, what about the Voyager right here, which just came out? It's still a pretty new keyboard, and I also have had a lot of really positive things to say about this keyboard. And if I had to pick between one of these two, I would hands down pick the Voyager. But that doesn't mean that there isn't a place for the Moonlander. The Voyager has a much smaller layout, so it may be more difficult for someone who is new to these keyboards to jump into the Voyager, and the smarter choice might be the Moonlander. It's got more keys, which is going to make it easier to transition from a normal keyboard to a keyboard like this, because you can still keep like your shift and control and alt in the same place, and use this key for command or the Windows key. And it has more buttons on the thumb cluster. And that still continues to be the one gripe that I have with the Voyagers. I wish there was a third key, and then I think the Voyager would be near perfection in my mind. But anyways, without getting ahead of myself, the Moonlander is also very portable. I would probably say it's the second most portable keyboard out of the 4 keyboards that we have here. And of course, if you want to mount it, then it does have mounting spots, so that's absolutely a possibility. In fact, that's a possibility on all of the keyboards except for the Kinesis. Something else that I think is kind of a nice touch with the Moonlander is it does have some of those little speakers in it, so it makes a little noise when you plug it in. And that's something that I actually kind of miss on the Voyager, but definitely not something you need. And of course, like the Voyager, the RGB lighting on this is really great, and it's easy to customize with the Oryx configurator. And that is probably one of the biggest reasons why I like these keyboards so much, is not just the keyboard itself, but the Oryx configurator software. It's just so good. If like you just don't want to deal with the firmware stuff, then get the Moonlander or the Voyager, so you just don't have to worry about it. All right, so let's focus a little bit more on the Voyager now. So this still is, I think, probably my favorite keyboard that I've tried so far out of the split mechanical keyboards. And if you've been wondering from my other videos if I'm going to choose to stay with the Glove 80 or switch back to the Voyager, well, honestly, I don't know. If I haven't already said it, which I'm pretty sure I have, I really wish this keyboard had a third button on the thumb cluster. And I think there's a couple different reasons for that. The main one probably is that I wish I had a dedicated shift key on the thumb cluster. Just the fact that you do program this keyboard through the Oryx configurator software, you don't have as much customization or fine-tuned control over Homerow mods as you do with ZMK. Now, you can do some customization with mod tab keys like Homerow mods in the Oryx configurator software, especially if you go into the advanced settings, but I just don't think you're going to get Homerow mods quite as good as you can with ZMK. That being said, I did feel like Homerow mods were pretty good on the Voyager, at least where I eventually got them, but the main problem for me is around the shift key, and so not having a dedicated shift key on the thumb cluster feels like it's just really holding me back on this keyboard. If there was one reason why you wouldn't want to get this keyboard, it would be because of its small layout. I think I've already mentioned this. I have legitimate short-term memory issues going on here, so forgive me. But what was I saying? Holy crap, I don't even know. Usually I try to follow some sort of script, but this video I decided I'm just gonna try to wing it and see how that goes. So if it seems a little disjointed, that's why. Oh, right. Yes. Okay. So this has a small layout. This keyboard is going to be more difficult to transition to than a keyboard like the Moonlander that has more keys, or the Glove 80, which also has more keys, allowing you to keep some of the same muscle memory that you're used to using on a normal keyboard, like the one built into your laptop or just a normal 10-key keyboard. But if this keyboard just speaks to you and you're willing to just dive in and just accept that that's going to be kind of painful at first, then get this keyboard. And also, I think there's something to be said about a natural evolution to prefer to have smaller and smaller layouts. I know I've mentioned many times that when I switched to the Kinesis Advantage 360 Pro, that it pretty much cured my RSI overnight. Interestingly, after switching to this keyboard, even though I was expecting my RSI symptoms to come back, they didn't. And I think the reason for that is because of Homerow mods. And the reason why I use Homerow mods on this keyboard is because the layout is so small. So it makes sense from an ergonomic standpoint to prefer smaller layouts because there's less finger movement, and less finger movement generally translates into better ergonomics. And if you can dial in your Homerow mods and get them feeling good on your keyboard, then like it's a great way of typing, especially if you can get yourself to not use the outer keys for modifiers like Shift and Control and Alt, which takes use of your pinky. And I've pointed out that I specifically have issues with my pinky, but really that's going to be a problem for anybody because just because of how your hand is built. Anything that anchors one of your fingers on this side of the keyboard and causes you to do some kind of stretch is not going to be super ergonomic. But then that goes back to the whole thing where yeah, this is going to be a more difficult transition for you if this is your first split mechanical keyboard and you're trying to unlearn muscle memory that relies on your pinky hitting modifier keys over here and switches completely to Homerow mods and layer switching and all that other stuff. That would be a lot to take in. And I don't even want to imagine what something like the Ferris Sweep, which only has 34 keys, would feel like transitioning to. Yikes. I'm sure someone out there has done it and you're going to call me out in the comments and whatever. I don't care. Okay, moving on. Last but not least, we have the Glove 80. So I just got this keyboard pretty recently. I've had it for, I want to say like a month now. I'm really not keeping track, but I have put out my first impressions video of this keyboard and they've been very good. So for me, which one would I prefer? I don't know. I really don't know. It's a toss-up at this point. I love the experience of typing on this keyboard, but just practically, I feel like this one is better for me for my day-to-day work as a software engineer. And even though I did mention that I didn't feel any of my RSI symptoms come back when I switched from the Kinesis to this keyboard, that was true up until actually very recently. I enjoy a good video game every now and then, and recently I've been getting sucked into City Skylines 2. We don't need to talk about that, but I'm resisting so hard to not go on a rant about City Skylines 2 right now. But so I've been playing some video games. As all PC gamers know, WASD are the main keys that you use to move your character or a camera or whatever in every game in pretty much all of existence. But that is really awkward and it kind of hurts to have your fingers sit on WASD because this outer column right here is meant for your pinky. And so when you put your fingers on WASD and have your ring finger on there, it's raised and shifted down a little bit. And that's really uncomfortable to play games with. And there's workarounds for this. Of course, you can have a whole bunch of different layers on this keyboard. So you could have a dedicated gaming layer where you shift over WASD to ESDF, or you could just go into the video game itself and change the mappings there. But neither of those solutions feels good to me. It feels bleh. I don't want to have to deal with that because it's like playing with dominoes. Like as soon as you hit one domino, it just creates this chain reaction. It's the same thing when you start moving keys around on your layout, but depending on your game and the key bindings and like where it's comfortable to place different things, like that can really just screw everything up. Some games, I guess it might be okay, but yeah, that just doesn't feel ideal to me. And I'd rather just use a different keyboard, which I have for gaming. And so that's what I've been doing, but I don't think it's because of the keyboard itself, the Voyager itself, that I've been having a flare up with my RSI. I think it's mostly because of my mouse, and I do have kind of an ergonomic mouse, but I switched to this one because I also have a gaming mouse, which is very light. It's supposed to be easy for me to, move my hand around. And this thing is much heavier than this mouse, but I ended up switching to this mouse because just like holding the mouse like this with my hand all the time and not having that tilt, it was just really irritating me. And then I did start doing some typing with this keyboard and some programming because I wanted to keep that muscle memory around so that I could switch between the Voyager and the Glove 80, but my RSI, it was still there and it wasn't really going away using the Voyager. And then I pulled the Glove 80 back out. I got that feeling, the same feeling that I got the first time that I used the Kinesis, and I put my fingers here in the key well and it just felt so good. I got that same feeling with the Glove 80, and I haven't been feeling any RSI symptoms since I stopped using my mouse and stopped using the Voyager. So when it comes to combating RSI, if that is your top priority, you just need a keyboard that'll make it so you can type and do your job. If you're a programmer or maybe an editor, writer, someone that uses their keyboard and does a lot of typing, then get the Glove 80. And if you don't want to get the Glove 80 for whatever reason, then get the Kinesis. And if you don't want to get the Kinesis, then good luck. I don't know. Everyone's RSI is different, but there are a lot of testimonials out there of people who have used these keyboards and have had the same kind of experience that I did, and their RSI being completely resolved or greatly improved from switching to one of these keyboards. And then on top of that, focusing back on the Glove 80, the Glove 80 is a very customizable keyboard, and you can do things like putting on mounting plates so that you can get some extreme tinting. I've taken them off for this video. There's a lot of different possibilities with keyboards that have a mounting system. And the last reason that I'll touch on why you might want to get the Glove 80 over the Moonlander or the Voyager is if you want extreme control over the firmware on your keyboard. So the Glove 80 and the Kinesis use a firmware called ZMK, while the Moonlander and the Voyager use QMK. I've not personally played around with QMK, but it's something I'm actually quite happy about. But from what I understand, QMK has been around for longer, so it has more features, but is also a lot more difficult for newcomers, and has maybe even built up some cruft over the years, which tends to happen with software. But this also means that it doesn't have the same baggage to carry around that QMK does. And even though I wouldn't say that it's exactly beginner friendly, and I don't really have anything to compare it with, it does seem approachable enough that someone with some programming experience would be able to understand or grok it by looking at a few code snippet examples and looking at other people's configs. And like I've said, when it comes to Homerow mods, there's different flavors to Homerow mods, which I'm not going to get into in this video, but I think you would be pretty hard pressed to get as good of Homerow mods, or like the best flavor of Homerow mods, using QMK as you can with ZMK. I think the features that ZMK offers is going to give you a better experience with Homerow mods. So if deeply customizing the firmware on your keyboard is something that's important to you, then definitely consider the Glove 80 with the Kinesis Advantage 360 Pro as an alternative. One last thing that I forgot is Bluetooth. If Bluetooth is important to you, then your only options are the Glove 80 or the Kinesis. Out of these four, obviously there's a lot of Bluetooth enabled keyboards out there, but the Moonlander and Voyager are USB only, where the Glove 80 and Kinesis can be USB or Bluetooth. And when you switch between a different Bluetooth profile, it's very quick at switching between devices. So if you have to control multiple workstations, then that would definitely be a compelling reason to get this keyboard. And so that's kind of it. To wrap things up as best as I can, the Moonlander is probably the best keyboard that you can get out of these four as an introduction into split mechanical keyboards. The Voyager, which also I think is cool looking, probably cooler than the Moonlander if we're being honest here. It just feels great. This keyboard is so well built, and it solves a lot of the little things that kind of bugged me about the Moonlander. Plus the smaller layout, despite only having the two thumb cluster keys, is probably a better ergonomic bet for your hands than the Moonlander. The Kinesis is a great keyboard, but I just think there are more compelling options that have been coming out in recent years. But if you have RSI and this is your only option for some reason, maybe your company has some kind of business deal with Kinesis where you can get one of these keyboards, then absolutely get this keyboard. Although I would recommend getting the Advantage 2 or the Advantage 360 non-pro version, not the pro version. And then finally, the Glove 80, I really think the king of ergonomic keyboards right now. Like I said, I think this keyboard does pretty much everything the Kinesis does, but better. And of course, if you want to learn more about any of these keyboards, I have videos on all of them where I go into probably too much detail. So if any of these keyboards seem particularly compelling to you, go and check out those videos, and do me a favor with the algorithm and hit the like button and the subscribe button if you want to see more of this type of content. There's like a particular matchup that you would like to see, like the Glove 80 versus the Voyager or whatever. I know all of you also want to see the Digmidify. I wouldn't mind seeing that keyboard, but is it time to set up a Patreon account? A Discord server? I'm really getting deep into this. Anyways, thanks for watching and have a great day.